So, Mr. Jim, do you want to tell everybody what's been going on with you going down to North Carolina and Georgia and all that stuff? What have they been doing?
Well, I probably ought to preface this and just explain to folks that I did some processes about 15 years ago. Anybody who's been following the usufruct stuff we used to do a decade or so with me and Boris, I actually completed the usufruct and what that means is basically I took the birth certificate as a security, endorsed it and deposited it to the Treasury in fulfillment of 12 U.S.C. 9582 and 40 Stat 411, which is fancy. That's where they statutized the Trading with the Enemy Act and the Emergency Banking Act in 1933. But basically, I put that into the Treasury for full acquittance and discharge, and it shut off. It basically magically sealed the Social Security number. So I've been traveling by right and doing that stuff, and I don't use a social and kind of living outside of the grid of it all. And that's a whole other. I got some stories about that, but I want to move forward so I don't use a government ID. No man can serve two masters, and I know who my master is, and it's not Caesar. So, but I did get pulled over. You guys probably, I did do an interview with Brian, and I think you may have reposted it, Pastor. But
not as of recent.
That was 2024 April or May or something like that.
Yeah, it was on Brian Parker's channel. I did post it in here. Yeah.
And I learned some stuff from Popeye and from some other people. I got some other cool ideas here, and I applied them all. So, and again, I do First Amendment auditing. If you ever go look at the channel, Georgia Watchdog, DAWG, Free Press. I've been starting to do First Amendment auditing, do the roadside stuff. So I've been pulled over twice in about a week time. So I got about 10 tickets. Now, I never give ID if they don't identify, don't give the number, and then they don't provide the reasonable article of suspicion of a crime. Many of you guys know how that works. You are not compelled to have to produce identification. So remember, when they bust me, when they go ahead and pull over and they do all this, and of course I got thrown in jail, and they don't have a name. They ran the prints and they came up with their own name, and it happened to be the name of that trust, that all capital letters name on the trust. Generally, were the trustee of the managing trustee of the trust funds, as you know, it's Social Security Administration is now a guy, Scott Bessant. He's the new Secretary of the Treasury. And first thing I do is every time they want me to sign something or a bail statement or tickets or anything like that, first thing I do is I say, well, if I don't, what are you going to do? And of course they threaten, well, I'm going to throw you in jail. Immediately, I'm under threat, arrest, and coercion. How is a signature? You cannot provide a signature if you don't do it with full knowledge, free consent, and good faith. Full knowledge being you got to know the contents of everything on that document that you're scribbling on. Free consent, you're going to do it voluntarily and without a gun at your head, which is impossible when they threaten you. And good faith, meaning I intend to do everything on it. Any one of those makes it not a signature. And there is no agreement.
Makes it no contract either. If
no signature, no signature, no contract, right?
Well, no signature.
No
enforcement is not.
No enforcement.
No signature is not the important part. You have to have the free consent.
Yes. But what I do write is general agent, under duress. So if they ever want me to sign anything, everything becomes general agent. That's my limited capacity. Under duress. That means I'm being forced. There is no contract. So that's a lot of fun. Because now every piece of paper that goes into the court, I don't have a contract if I don't have a license, right? I don't have a contract. If the birth certificate's been put back in, I have no obligation to use that name for anything. And in fact, that would be a trespass. So I don't, that's their name, not mine. So anyways, after all that's done, they went to we went to court the other day. I don't know. Did you share to this group any of the recordings that I took there?
No, not yet. No.
Okay.
I planned on doing that.
You're free to share.
I will. I was going to do that after this.
Okay. Or if anybody wants to go to YouTube and look up Georgia Watchdog, DAWG, Free Press.
Yeah.
That's the channel, and I uploaded the videos there. The audio, I apologize, folks. It's scratchy. It's a little muffled. I had the video camera on in my chest pocket, and it didn't, I didn't have control of where it was aiming. Without being real obvious, but I recorded it all. And let me just say this: I've been in Pinellas County. I've been in gigantic courthouses in metropolitan or suburban areas. This podunk courthouse in Franklin County, it reminded me of the lunchroom in junior high. And the folks that I was dealing with, well, it's clear that these are not your Perry Mason attorneys. These guys are, I'm trying to be polite, not very educated. They're just conducting business, and they're dealing with more uneducated people, and they're ill-equipped to deal with someone who knows how to make paperwork. So before I went in there, I started the administrative process. I'm still doing it. I'm waiting to get the green cards back on the second notice, but you guys may be familiar with the three-part process. I do my own paperwork, but it's loosely based on a couple of people in this group. Many thanks to you, Wolverine, for your input on this. But I've changed it even since then. And I'd be happy to share it, but I want to... I have mixed feelings because I think if you do this stuff, folks, and you're putting the paper in, you need to understand every single word of exactly what you're doing with the paper and why every single word must have a reason or shouldn't be on there. But it's, starts with the agent's notice to principal. And that, and in there, I defined about the stuff about when an agency realizes agent relationship arises. The service on a corporation under Georgia Code 142504, you have to do it under your own state code. But I served it by certified mail return receipt requested to the principal. The principal, there is a board of directors, a board of trustees, that you can see it. Yeah, board of trustees. It's at the Social Security Administration website. I think you've shared that link before. It's not up to date. Now we all know that the Secretary of the Treasury is Scott Bessant, but it still has, what's her name? The lady with the crazy white Ringo hairdo. Janet Yellen. Hold on a second. Garcia? Hush, dog. Jeez, dog. Calm him down. He's making a lot of noise. Sorry about that. The dog's barking at someone at the door. Then the second thing was the indemnification clause under Georgia Code 142857. Again, folks, look it up in your own state because the state law prevails in your own state. But basically, I put out my understanding that I am, I'm not a trustee. I'm not a beneficiary, an active beneficiary. I'm not the res. I'm not the property. That would be a violation, like you said, of the Northwest Ordinance. So what's my relationship to that name all over their paperwork? And that's where I learned in the agency class, a general agent. So the first thing I sent out, and I'm kind of going through this in slow-mo for everyone here, because not only do I put a copy of all the claims being brought against that name, my job as an agent is the only job is to give full notice and disclosure to the principal. The trustees of the principal, they're the ones who hold legal title to the trust. And so we serve them a copy of all these tickets, which are basically claims against the name. With that, I also include a copy of a Social Security card with that name on it, front and back. And I also include on there this lovely little letter a friend gave me from the Social Security Administration. It's been redacted, but it does say specifically that the name on that Social Security card is a legal representative, which is a fancy word for a general agent. And it also
that
says,
was my letter.
Yeah. Okay, all right. I was going to let you step up and claim it. Okay.
I showed it to him the other night.
It's a fantastic letter, and it is always part of my first package because it says in there there's nobody listed as guarantor, which is another fancy word for the commercial term surety. So obviously, I'm not a surety, and I'm merely an agent. So here's all my evidence, and it's on government paperwork. It's not stuff I pulled out of my butt. It's real bona fide government stuff. So I show them that I'm giving full knowledge. I send a letter to all of them, certified mail. I take a picture at the post office after they stamp everything, date stamp it all. I lay the envelopes out, and I include that. And then when I get the green card back, or actually it takes sometimes months to get it from the Treasury, I'll call the post office, and when they say, yeah, this has been received, I go down and they give me a printout. So it shows they received it, and that's when the time clock starts ticking for the first 14-day period. I give them 14 if I have time. I give them 10 if I have less, or 3 if I have no time. But there's nothing saying what is a reasonable amount of time. I figure 14 days is not bad. 2 weeks. After 2 weeks and 1 day, I sent out the second notice. That's known as default probable cause. And, thank you, Wolverine, estoppel by acquiescence with opportunity to cure. All this stuff operates on an ancient maxim of law that silence is assent. If you have an obligation to step up and contest an affidavit or a statement or something asserted as a fact, and you remain silent after some amount of time, you basically agree by your own acquiescence, by your own silence. And that is a legitimate principle, and we're going to use that to basically come away saying, hey, the Secretary of the Treasury agrees. It's his property, and I'm just an agent. And I've fulfilled my duties. And so I've already got the second letter. It's been sent. It's been received, but I've got to give them a chunk of time. So anyway, I decided to go ahead and usually put that together, make a copy, put it all together, and then I put a piece of paper on top, which is a memorandum to the court. Let me see if I got a copy of my memorandum here. Do you mind if I take a second? I'll read this. I go memorandum regarding, put the date regarding case number, citations number, memorandum to the court. Attached here are the first 2 of 3 notices served upon the owner/principal of the trust that you've named as defendant. The owner principal has been given many months and multiple opportunities to settle this matter and to confer and provide direction to proceed. And owner principal has remained silent. See attached notices 1 and 2 and corresponding exhibits attached therewith. We will continue to give principal adequate and fair opportunity to respond until their silence constitutes assent. And that's the 3-step administrative process that I just described. We also invite this honorable court. I added this one. We also invite, now I can't make a motion because I don't have standing if I'm there by special appearance. We also invite this honorable court to contact the principal directly. The names, offices, and addresses of all the trustees / principals of record are included in the documents herewith. In my limited capacity as a general agent for said trust, my duties of agent have thus been fulfilled prior to the hearing scheduled for March 6, 2025. That was yesterday. And I will be happy to appear in my limited capacity as a general agent to show that my duties I have fulfilled in good faith. Further affiant saith not, James Bernard, pastor, general agent for the trust. And that's how I sign everything. My Christian appellation, first and middle. As you know, the surname is a shared name, and it's not my property. Pastor, I like to bring that in simply.
I just told y'all that the other day. That's how I sign all my business documents, because the pastor, that's also your title under agency.
Yeah, that not only that, but it invokes ecclesiastic law. It brings in another law form, and we can go down that path if you want. But
Yeah, we don't have to.
just trust me. I'm following God's law in doing this. This isn't. This is guys. This is don't do this stuff if you think this is just a cute trick to get away with not paying tickets. If you're going to go into this to try to find a cute trick, you're going to be tested and you're going to lose. You got to go into this in good faith. You're just fulfilling. You're not here to destroy the law. You're here to fulfill it. And again, general agent for the trust. General agent is what all shows up on all the other paperwork, right? General agent under duress. Okay. So I put all this stuff in. If you watch the video, some fun stuff happened. And I think that's probably why Pastor put me on here, because I'll tell you, the way this unfolded, it was such a comedy. I was having a hard time not laughing. It was easy to stay calm. But they didn't even have sign in. They said, okay, when they call the name over here, go out and negotiate with your prosecutor if you want to plead guilty or not guilty, or traffic school or something, So this guy came out with a little bit of peach fuzz, the prosecutor. I swear he was fresh out of law school, if he even went. He came in and he says, okay, well, and I'm paraphrasing. You can see the exact words or hear the exact words if you go check out that video I uploaded. But he sat there and he's like, well, he said, you got all these charges against you. And I said, no, they're not against me. They're against government property. And he goes, what? I said, yeah, here, take a look here. And he started looking through this paperwork. I said, see, and he goes, well, these are your charges. And I said, no, sir. He said, you gave him the name. I said, no, sir, I didn't give anyone a name. You guys came up with that name and put it on your paperwork. I never gave a name. And I said, that's actually, the evidence shows that's a government-owned trust. And my understanding and the trustee's understanding is that, as you can see with the Social Security letter and everything else, I'm just merely an agent. I'm here in an limited agency capacity. And he says, well, do you want to plead? And I said, I don't believe I've been given authorization from the principal to enter a plea. You guys, now that I've given you evidence of who the principal is, why don't you guys go directly to Scott Bessant, the Secretary of the Treasury, and give him the plea? Maybe invite him down here to protect his assets. And this guy's looking through it, and he goes, I don't know. I'm going to just bring this to the judge because I don't understand any of this. And he got up and walked out, and I got up and walked behind. I said, well, ignorance of law is no excuse. So we went back into the. What's that?
I love that. When you can use their tricks against them, that is freaking great.
Yeah. So now I went back into the lunchroom. I mean the courtroom. I mean, again, it was like high school lunchroom. I went back in to sit down, and then they called the case. And I came up there, and of course, I always start off and I say, I'm here by special appearance. Now, when you say special appearance, you're contesting the jurisdiction of the court. That's a magic word. A special appearance doesn't mean you appear. They're ruling in the land of the dead, and if you appear, then you're dead, and they get to perform probate over your dead body. But I go in there, and I'm here by special appearance, and then I'm in my limited capacity as a general agent only. Here, it appears that you've made a mistake, and I'm here to help you settle your matter. Said something to that effect. So, which means basically, too, in a way, wouldn't that be pleading mistake? And mistake is a viable pleading. In fact, I learned years ago, Boris used to say, the only true pleading is mistake, and the only true remedy is forgiveness. And that's biblical. Hey, how does mistake sound? I'm sorry. I made a mistake. And forgiveness, well, do you forgive me? And we all know the Lord's Prayer. So anyway, he starts looking through this paperwork, and I said, it's clear here, that at this point, I've got no contest or no challenge from the principals who own the name that you're charging. He said, so this isn't your name. And I said, No, sir. I'm kind of whispering because I understand these guys don't want me to run when I get my ego in there and I'm going to show them how much I know and I'm going to take charge of his court, I'm going to get smacked down. They don't like that. They don't want me to do a seminar in their courtroom. So I try to talk softly and say, look, what they're thinking is this is government property, so this guy here is a government agent. I think that's what happened in his head. But he's thumbing and he's looking through this, and he says, so do you want to enter a plea? And I said, again, my standard thing, I said, well, I'm not sure in my limited capacity as a general agent that I've gotten authority from the principal, from the Secretary of Treasury, to enter a plea in the principal's behalf. You might want to invite him in. And that's when he said, well, I'm not going to play this game. And I was like, this isn't a game, Your Honor. This is how the law works, or something like that. And he said, well, I'm going to punt. That's what I call it. He just said, then we're just going to, I'm going to put this up to Superior Court, and I'm going to let them deal with the arraignment. This is basically out of his ballpark. He doesn't want to deal with it. I don't even think he's a judge. He's just an administrator, probably a semi-retired attorney. And his limit and scope I think, well, you and I talked a little bit about this, Pastor, and I think you ought to share your insights, because my question is, why would he scurrily just send it up to Superior Court and not touch it like it's a big hot potato?
Sometimes it's he's afraid of what you're going to expose in the court. Sometimes.
Jim, you're pretty mad at jurisdiction.
No, when I went to traffic court, and I started bringing up the whole thing about constructive fraud in the contract, he very quickly shut me down. He said, $50 fine, you can appeal it within 10 days. And I walked out and appealed it. When I took it to trial, and they called us about just early in the day, probably right before lunch. And the DA, she said, we're going to dismiss this upon payment of costs. And all I said was, I'll appeal it. The judge said, what arguments are you going to make? I said, constitutional arguments. And he said, can I get everybody done first? And I smiled at him because I knew what he was asking. Please don't make us look bad in here.
Don't do your seminar in my courtroom.
So I smiled at him and said, yeah, that's fine. He said, okay, sit back down. He got everybody done and waited until everybody was gone. So I'm expecting when you go to Superior Court, which in Georgia, that's probably what the trial court is, they will probably make sure everybody's gone first.
Well,
he may not know anything. Most time those low-level judges, yes, they are attorneys, because all the state constitutions has a clause that to be a judge, you have to be a bar member. Do you know that is the only position that there is a requirement to be a bar member is to be a judge? Everything else is just because they're protecting their interests by making sure that the attorneys and stuff.
Right. Well, and I anticipate some of my thought on this is that, again, it was abundantly clear I'm dealing with a podunk municipality. I mean, like I said, I've never seen a ramshackle courthouse. I felt like my cousin Vinny. It was just not a lot of education in the room, and I think that they quickly understood this is out of their ballpark, and they're going to send it up to someone who understands this stuff. And I think my guess is once I complete my process and put it in there, and I am thinking about maybe I'll dig through my files and show a authenticated copy of the birth certificate that 12 or 15 years ago that I accepted and then gave over. I deposited with the Treasury, which might show, hey, the Treasury's holder in due course of that name.
Well, I mean, you probably could. bring that also into court, showing evidence of that.
Yeah.
You know, now I will tell y'all, when Bubba told me he did that with the Treasury years ago, I said, and I meant this, you know, I was not being insulting when I said this. I said, "You are an absolute idiot." He said, "What do you mean?" He didn't even know about agency back then. I said, "You've locked yourself out of the ability to be able to use it for its intended purpose. You can no longer use it." He said, "Right, I can't. You have to go through somebody else to do anything." I said, "Instead of doing full settlement and closure, you could do settlement, but keep it open. You want to be able to continue to use it because that's its intended purpose, so the trust can be profitable." So he's slowly been changed. That's when he started learning about agency, and he took my class.
Yeah, well, I'd been an agent years ago in a previous life. I was a broker, a real estate agent, in a couple of classes, and I had to teach. I did teach trust and contract law for continuing education to attorneys and to realtors. But the way you laid out the stuff from, I think it was Corpus Juris Secundum, was it? You pulled that stuff up?
Yes. Yes.
But the stuff that you were laying out, when I sat that next to the trust stuff, and I understood the trust stuff easily, the agency stuff, I was missing pieces. And when you put the pieces in there, suddenly it was like I had a huge aha moment where I'm like, oh my gosh, trust and agency go hand in hand perfectly. So now at this point, I'm having a little fun with it. So
now, Brian Parker, if you got anything you want to say or ask, go ahead.
No, I just find this very curious because, you know, this is an avenue that really hasn't been done by very many people. And so it's very interesting to watch to see how this transpires. But
we're actually having quite a few successes in here. Daniel, he doesn't have a child support case that's active, but not for their lack of trying, because he did this whole agent name argument with the child support, the DA, the assistant DA, the judge. Now, in his case, the county won't even touch it. The county has moved it up to the state, so he's shutting everybody down. Then you've got Scotty Wayne. He did it in a debt collection case for his deceased wife's estate. That got the court to shut it down. I mean, we're having successes. Now, is it a 100% success? No. You got some people in here that has tried, and a couple of them, they got scared, and they tripped up and volunteered into liability. And then you've got some where just the court don't care. They just run completely over it.
Right. And
but more than not, we've had successes.
Yeah, I'd say it's going to vary depending on, you know, who you are in front of and, you know, what kind of mood he's maybe in at that time. But I mean, I've had my situations, which, I mean, I quit counting after like 21 or 22 interactions with law enforcement, and they weren't all pullovers. The majority of them were, but not all of them. And I saw my successes with the way I handled the situation with being agent for their state-created organization, their juridic entity. So, yeah, I've definitely seen evidence firsthand myself. Correct.
Yep. I'd like to just add. See, I have another 5 tickets out there. If you go back to, you put up my videos from my YouTube channel. If you go there and you can see that I used to do some stuff for copblock.org years ago. I got some stuff where I would film cops. I've been laying low for a number of years after a bunch of stuff went down. I got Michael Flynn because I started helping people win foreclosures. That's another show. That's another story. But they brought false felony charges against me and Lisa, and ran us through the ringer for 8 months and cost $30,000 and everything else. They basically wanted me to leave the state. They were willing to forget about time or anything major. If I would plead no contest, I could leave without a ankle bracelet or anything. I just had to take down all my teachings, stop helping people win foreclosures. I started doing April Charney's Show Me the Notes stuff, and I took it to another level. I'll just say with I talked about the definition of signatures, and if you don't have full knowledge, you can put in a bona fide affidavit saying, I've read the document and there is no bona fide signature, further affiant saith not. And then again, do your administrative process. They've got an obligation to respond, and if they don't respond to a bona fide affidavit, then that affidavit stands as a fact in law. So I started winning using basically those principles without going too deep in it. Anyway, I laid low, but I'm just getting real tired. My ultimate goal in all this stuff is to be just left the heck alone. Just leave me alone. I don't hurt people. I'm a blessing to those around me. I don't hurt people. I don't damage property. Just leave me alone. That's all I want.
And they're not gonna do that until you take them to court and make them pay you.
All right. Well, there's my segue. Thank you. Okay. So I've had a little fun with the local Habersham County up here. That was that first win. That's on Brian's channel. The interview, I think you maybe reposted it here, but that went fantastic. And that now they have my name here. They know who I am. So I got pulled over, and that video you'll see, I held the cop to task. He was a brand new cop. He wasn't giving me his ID. He refused. He told me, the only reason I pulled you over is because you have a chain dangling off your trailer in the back. And I said, great, I'll go fix the chain. And he goes, no, I need your ID. And I said, fine, then I need reasonable articulable suspicion of a crime. He was like, well, the chain. I'm like, no. That's a ticketable infraction, right? A ticket, or to the plate, or provided reasonable articulable suspicion. He refused to do it, so he ended up threatening me. And I said, okay, now I'm under threat, duress, and coercion. Now no contract's possible. And he ended up taking me in. They didn't have a name. And when I talked to the guy that booked me, the only charge that they threw me in solitary confinement for 3 days and refused to give me medical treatment. I have high blood pressure, and I have a script for ivermectin and metformin. I do I beat 4th stage cancer metabolically. I can share that with anybody who really wants it. I have a 5-part regimen that I come up with, and I've saved 36 lives last year. Or at least my regimen did. God help. But so anyways, I got pulled over. It's in Habersham. I filmed it all. And after 72 hours, they had come up, once they ran the prints and they came up with that trustee's property name again, the birth certificate name again. I mean, I'm not giving it to them. They're pulling it out of their system. They decide who they want to bring charges to charge or bring charges or claims against. And it ain't me. So I'm doing the admin process for them, but you know what? They have not yet bundled together all those tickets and turned it into a case. So there's no case setting. There's nothing I can take this document in a memorandum cover sheet and put it into. I've been tracking it down. And the clerk says it's sitting at the solicitor's office. Solicitor is what Georgia calls a prosecutor. That head prosecutor knows that name and has seen my paperwork, and she's the one who quickly nolo prost. Oh, there we go. There's the interview on Brian's channel. Y'all listen to that when you get a chance. It's fun.
Now, flowers that video there, that was after he called me 4 days, if I'm not mistaken, before that case. He had already gotten out his two notices. I said, have you done a third? He said, no, not yet. I said, get that third one in the mail.
Yep.
It doesn't matter if they've received it, because under the rules of civil procedure, when it goes into the mail, it's considered filed.
Yes.
Okay. They have to give at least 3 days for mailing. So he gets the third notice out. He completes his memorandum. He goes to court. He gets that file put into the court file, his memorandum, and all 3 notices, all his evidence, the complete file. Puts it into the case at 4:30.
Yeah, but also plus a copy of the social.
Okay, yeah.
I made a part of the evidence pack. Yeah, I'm sorry. Part of the evidence package, I always include both sides of the Social Security card. I learned that from Popeye and his little thing about having the thank you, Popeye. The little thing where Popeye has the judge. Well, look at your Social Security card. What does it say on the back there? Return to me or the owner. Boom. And then the letter from Social Security Administration saying that it's I'm nothing more than an agent, and I'm not a surety, or I think they call you the authorized representative and a guarantor. Same thing.
Guarantor, yeah.
But I put that in as part of the evidence too. Mm-hmm. So I think that those all are part of a nice big package that they can look. They got multiple evidence from multiple directions that I'm not that name. I'm not the owner of that name. That's government property, and I'm just an agent. So in any case, and you can listen to that because the solicitor, the prosecutor, the first time she didn't like me, and I signed in funny because they wanted me to sign in, and I put the all capital letters name and I boxed it, and then to the left of it I wrote the word for : and I hand wrote for : so I'm there for that name, that case. And I always urge people, bring friends with video cameras to sit in various places throughout the audience to help film this stuff. Because I have had things where they want to, grab me and throw me in jail anyway, even though I've made an appearance. I've had a judge go in and say, well, oh, okay. Well, then if you're not that name, then let's put out a bench warrant for failure to appear. They play games, if you guys don't know. They'll play all sorts of little games. And part of the reason I have witnesses in there, so if they do that, I stand up and I turn around and address the crowd. I said, let the court show that the judge and everybody here knows that I'm not one and the same with the named defendant. They recognize that. And you guys know who I am. And I'd be happy if you put in an affidavit that I appeared. And I've shut down bench warrants doing that years ago. That was I was Pinellas County. That was 15 years ago. I've been beating tickets doing stuff like that. They can't put out a bench warrant if you go and refute that with affidavits saying that he appeared, he was there. In any case, it turns like to come back to the story at hand. These 5 tickets, again, they wrote me up for obstruct when they were booking me. I said, "What are you throwing me in jail for? An infraction for a chain hanging?" They said, "No, he says you obstructed." Now, I'm not going to go into the whole legal definition. I don't have it in front of me, but obstruction really requires physical getting in the way of a cop in his line of duty. You have to physically do something. Simply refusing to obey a unlawful order, and believe me, if he doesn't have reasonable or articulable suspicion of a crime, then he can't demand an ID or threaten jail. And so that's not obstruction, disobeying an unlawful order. So, but that's what they had. I said, okay, this is going to be fun. Well, once they ran the prints, and they decided to put the government-owned name on the birth certificate name on these 5 tickets now, driving without a license, driving on a suspended license, driving all this other stuff they threw in the pile, and it's all for that same name. Well, I'm doing the legal process now, but I haven't put it in. But when I tracked it down, and it's sitting on that prosecutor's table, and it's not going anywhere. but at least I know where it's at. So when I do deposit it, I'm going to go in to her and physically hand it to her and film me serving her personally with my package of the evidence. And it's probably, I anticipate that they're going to not even file. Now, I've been talking, I don't know, did my buddy Corey show up? Is Corey in here?
I don't know that he did. He didn't ask for the link, and he never said he was actually on Telegram.
Okay, well, I wanted to invite him in because I've learned some stuff from him. Corey, kudos to you, dude. Flowers abundantly. Corey's got a channel, Zombie Hunter or Zombie Cause Zombie something or other. I can find it and put it up here in the Telegram at after this. And I see somebody wants my paperwork. I can share that, but I want to redact it before I do anything. And I want to, each one of you, I need to make sure you don't boilerplate my stuff. I don't boilerplate anyone else's. I'll read it, but I come up with always with my own paperwork. And I urge you to do the same. Use mine and boilerplate, but do never copy someone else's paperwork ever. Thank you, Charlie.
That's why I do not push paperwork on this channel. I mean, I don't mind sharing things. Yeah, most of y'all know that. But if you think you're going to have this kind of paperwork and it's just going to fix your situation when you get into one, you probably can't defend it. If you can't defend it, it ain't going to work.
And you will be tested. And they usually, I noticed that a pattern that they'll test in threes. They'll throw you a line of bull crap and try to either ensnare you to say, I don't follow orders. When I'm in a courtroom, I don't really like to answer questions or make statements. What I do is I always speak in questions. As long as you're asking questions, you stay in honor. He who answers the question is the first to go out of honor, and he who asks questions is their ask king. They are directing the conversation. The minute you're answering questions, you have surrendered, and the other person is now pulling you on their leash. So, a good thing to do. There's a game we talked about this before that I love on Whose Line Is It Anyway? It's a TV show that's got a bunch of comedians, Wayne, Brady, some other people, and they have a game called the Question Game. And the objective is to have an entire conversation of nothing but questions. And it's great to practice with your friends. And the first person who answers or makes a statement or answers the other person's question loses the game. But me and friends will sit around and practice just having a great conversation with using nothing but questions. And especially if you're really good, that you can stand on your stone, who you are and what you're not, your process, what you've done, and their agreement by silent assent. Just, you got to stand on that rock. And all your questions, when they come at you to try to snare you into their trap, turn it around with the question of yourself. Even if it's like, well, don't you see here with this package that the Secretary of the Treasury agrees that it's his property and I'm merely an agent? Don't you see that they haven't given me any instructions to enter a plea? And this may be construed as fraud on their part if we go forward. Can't always start off or if you stumble and you're making a statement, well, I don't know about that. Then you follow it up quickly, like, what do you think? Or wouldn't you agree? Or, throw a question on the end of it to stay in honor. Now, to get back to where this is going, my goal is to just be left alone. And I've heard all this stuff about the do not arrest, do not detain list out there. To the best of my knowledge, the only people who really have that are under a higher up investigation. Like if you're part of the mob and they're investigating you, and they don't want to screw up that investigation by some idiot giving them a ticket, they'll tag that. But for the most part, people like you and me, just lay people, it doesn't exist. I haven't seen the evidence that exists, and I've got friends who are cops telling me that they've never seen it. Not to say,
Jim.
yeah.
Now, what, talking about the do not detain list?
Yeah.
I had an acquaintance of mine that was a former sheriff. He told me he had seen one time.
Okay.
So now you're not going to see
one time. Okay.
Yeah, you're not going to see public information on it. No, he just said he has seen it. Because when he run some guy's information, it had a bunch of red letters on the screen and everything. He had to call his partner because he was still fairly new. This was out in Oklahoma, and he looked at his partner and said, "What is this?" That's why he said he'll never forget it.
Well, I'm sure that person was probably involved with another investigation as well, and that's why it was there. I wanted to address something about the whole boilerplate topic, if I may. My group is, as of this spring, 10 years old on Facebook, and I can't count the amount of times that people have asked me for a template for this or a template for that. The problem is that there are no templates for any of these specific things, because what has to be written has to require certain elements, and the elements are different in everybody's case.
Right.
So if they see something just generic, they'll just throw it out anyway. But you want something that identifies the specific elements to your situation. So therefore, there really is no template if you see people running around selling templates.
And he's 100% right. And I'm going to back that up by saying also, Scripture tells us, don't go in there with a script. It should be written, the truth should be written on your heart. So when you do this paperwork, every single word needs to come from within. You need to do this yourself if you're going to go in there and try to stand on it. Otherwise, believe me, they are masters at deceit, and they will get you to stir off of your rock. But if you've done it all, every word is yours, every word comes from within, you will know how to respond. You will see right through when they start throwing you. They will try 3 times to get you off your rock. They will try 3 times. Usually I notice it happens in 3s. They're going to throw you a curveball or say something that's entirely untrue, or they're going to make an allegation that you have to rebut. And all that will be abundantly clear if you're doing this from the heart and it's original and it's your own. Because a boilerplate, there is no magic form for you, people. Don't be using someone else's stuff. Learn from it, but never, ever use somebody else's stuff. You're welcome, Dragonfly. So here's my ultimate goal. Now, let me go back to the stuff with Corey, if y'all don't mind, as long as I'm on this. He had done, this guy, I've gotten hold of him through a mutual friend, has won 4 Title 42 civil action lawsuits. 4. The latest one he won was for $995,000. And I think we all know about Tresevant versus City of Tampa. They held me wrongfully on a wrongful arrest, and they held me for 3 days in solitary confinement. And good thing I'm like my own company. But I like my own voice, and those cells are very acoustically well built, so I sang a lot. But basically, with 72 hours, you do the Tresevant set precedent for $1,100 a minute, I think it is. So if they, what's that?
It's close to that.
Yeah, about $1,100 a minute, I think. Yeah, because I think he was in there a little over half an hour, and they gave him $35,000, saying that $1,100 a minute was reasonable for wrongful arrest. So I've got me a nice big lawsuit. Now, those of you who don't know me, those of you who know me know that I'm, as a pastor, I don't serve mammon. This is not about me getting rich, doing Title 42s. This is let me just say that he's done the fourth one, and after this fourth one, he says, I can't get a cop to hold me for more than 5 minutes. He gives him a license, they send him on his way. And it makes me wonder about that do not arrest, do not detain. It may just be they call in and there's notes back with the captain say, yeah, leave that guy alone. I don't think this is going to be the yellow rectangle with red writing on the computer screen saying, do not arrest, do not detain. I really think this is more of a local informal thing. But my goal, I'm thinking Corey said something very important to me. He says, he doesn't think I should have put that video up yet. Because the title of my video, if someone wants to like copy it and paste it into the thread, you're welcome to look at my first ever official channel vid. I think it's Young Cop is about to get a huge lawsuit.
Well, and sometimes I can't disagree with Corey. Sometimes it's not a good thing to put every video and every recording into the public. I've got recordings with government I have never put out in public.
Yeah, I got some of those too. I got some other fun ones that I haven't put out yet. I had a half-an-hour conversation with a senior judge in Pinellas, but that's another story. But no, I'm not going to put that out. But I learned a lot of stuff. Anyway, the point is that I don't think they're going to bring charges. I think this is all going to be dismissed before they even create a case. And I do property bonds here, so I don't care about getting bond money back because all I did is I have property that I hold in a trust, and I have Lisa, who's the trustee. We're not married under the state, even though we've been together over 15 years as best friends. And Brian was there the day I got on my knee in where was it, Olive Garden?
Yeah, something like that. Yep, I filmed it,
yeah.
And I think you've got the film of it. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Well, yeah, she was still kind of underground because this is when they had brought federal charges against us and were trying to get us for grand theft of a house. And so she had disappeared, but we made an arrangement to meet. I deliberately didn't know where she was at. We had burner phones, so I could go to McDonald's with free Wi-Fi and she could talk to her grandkids and, that kind of stuff. But I deliberately wanted to make sure I didn't know where she was at any given time. But she showed up to have dinner with me, and I had a little gold ring. In the middle of the restaurant, I got on my knees and presented her the ring. And Brian filmed it, and the whole restaurant roared with applause. It was great. But in any event, we don't share the last name. And there's no marriage certificate. I don't believe in going to the government to get a license to do something that my Lord recommends. And besides, their marriage includes things like men with men and women with women and humans with dogs, or all marriage. The definition of marriage in their state is different than holy matrimony. One woman, one man united under God. That's the Trinity there, and not the state. Anyway. So she's able to go bring in and bond me out with property so I don't have to lose 10% to some bail bondsman. And I urge anybody who's going to try to go down a similar path and try to get peace and liberty from the highway guys, the highwaymen, the road robbers, this might be a path you might want to consider. Getting some chunk of property, even if it's only 2 acres, 3 acres somewhere you pick up for dirt cheap or at a tax sale or whatever you do. Just put it into a trust and have somebody not yourself, be the trustee, and then they can go and bail you out. In any event, I'm going to take Corey's advice because he's blazed that path. And now they don't really touch him at all. They won't go near him. And I'm like, well, that's where I want to be ultimately. So I do plan, for what it's worth, once I'm off the defense, even though, okay, yeah, I know I'm not really defending that government-owned name. that trust. I'm only protecting my position and relationship to it and being not liable for the trust charges against the trust. That's all this stuff. Once that's in the clear and there's nothing hanging over my head, see, they will not release body cam footage. They will not release statements and a whole bunch of other stuff if there's an active investigation. This is the excuse they use. Well, we can't release that. And I don't know if you guys have ever tried sometimes getting court documents, body cam footage. It's like pulling teeth, and when you get it, it's all edited. But their guard is down a little bit more if there's no active investigation. So I'm going to wait until the smoke clears and they're all done with their offensive actions before I go on offense. I am looking for. I really want an attorney who specializes, has no fear of cops. I want someone with titanium testicles to be able to go in here, and I'll give them 50%. I want a Title 42 for millions and settle, but I want it to hurt. See, I don't care about the money. I'll probably go ahead and buy houses and help people in North Carolina. I've got a God mission to do, and I'm financially, I'm okay. I'm fine. I'm not rich and not poor, but I'm not in want. And I have what I want. I'm a simple man. I live in the mountains of Georgia, for crying out loud. I don't need Maseratis and caviar. I'm happy with a F-250 and peanut butter sandwiches. I'm good. So, I'm not going to get rid of my simple life. What I want to do is, though, make it hurt. And I want to make it hurt because a couple of things. First of all, when the charges come and you can bring in not just the officer for his unlawful arrest, but for the police department who mistrained him, for the state who supported it and built it. I mean, I'm going to go all over there, or at least the county. If I can drag them all into this and make it multi-millions, they will never forget my name. They will never forget my name.
Yeah, they won't. But as much as I hate to say it, it's a double-edged sword. Does the government have certain rights to give out tickets and police the streets? Yes, they do.
Sure.
Do they abuse that right? Yes, they do, because they've turned it into a revenue-generating machine.
On the other hand, for a second, they also have a certain level of discretion.
They do.
They have a level of discretion before they decide to engage you in a contract or write a ticket.
They do. And they can't. I can't say these cops, no, you don't have to identify unless there's a crime. They might. I'd say a bunch of them are badly trained and don't know.
And that's fine. And that's why I set up my First Amendment audit channel, the Georgia Bulldog Free Press. Join it, you guys. I'll be coming out with more videos every time. I'm gonna go do some stuff. I go to the post office and look for Poster 7 and have a little fun in the courthouse. But I'm fine at this point. I've been laying low for 7 or 8 years after that crap went down in Florida. But, I'm not going to realize true peace and true freedom, or at least ride high enough above it. I'm not saying I will never be pulled over. I will never see the inside of a cell. But I just want to minimize it. I want to be left alone. I want to do God's work. And just leave me alone. That's my goal in all this. I don't care about the money, but I want it. That's their language. That's what makes it hurt. If you get too many lost mit claims against you as an officer because you aren't learning that you are a public servant and you have an obligation to protect, and defend God-given right. They're not constitutional rights. They're God-given rights. And they are protected by constitutional amendment.
Yeah.
So those are my God-given rights. And understand, too, I like to make this point, and I make it in the preamble of my chapter. If you're father, you love your daddy. and your daddy gives you a gift. Is he going to appreciate it if you never use it? If he gives you a bike and you just leave it in the garage, you don't play with it, you don't fix it, you don't go out and use it, you don't go exploring with it, you're showing disrespect to your daddy. Well, your rights are given to you by your daddy, your heavenly Father. You've got an obligation to exercise them and use them. And when somebody who's got a big ego and is a tyrant and think they're going to issue citations and throw their balls around, someone has to hold them accountable. And you can't let them stomp all over the present your dad gave you. If you don't stand up for your rights, you don't have any. And also, we have these are supposed to be somewhat educational. The reason I put this stuff out, and every other First Amendment auditor, except for a few that are just doing it, this isn't about my ego, but I do have a lot of knowledge, and I'm a 61-year-old man. I've been doing this since the 80s. So I don't have the fear. I don't have a 9-to-5. I'm not worried about losing a job. That holds a lot of people back because you don't want to spend 3 days in jail and lose your job. And, you every one of you have to decide your own path for yourself. But this is my path, and I am going to exercise and glorify my Father and exercise the gifts he gave me and protect them and educate all those that are supposed to protect them with me wearing a badge and a gun, that they're here to protect and defend my God-given rights. So that's a lot of what this channel's about. My First Amendment audit channel is really about doing God's work. And my goal is, like I said, ultimately, I think at the end of all this, I've had people when I went to the courthouse who have recognized me, and so I only had 150 hits. I don't know what's going on with that video, but I've been thinking about pulling it, but it's kind of too late at this point.
Never too late.
Well, I'll probably amend it once I do this process, and then I'd go on the offense. Then I'll add to it and make it a better video. But yeah. The idea is it goes back to Juvenal, the Roman poet, and he once says, "Quis custodiet et custodios," who will guard the guardians? Who will watch the watchmen? The answer to that in a free republic is we, the people. We're on top. They're our public servants, and we're the ones who have to hold. If we don't, they're going to run crazy like they have. People have gotten lazy and stupid and don't know their rights and don't defend the gifts from their Father, their God. And you know what? They erode away. Then the cops don't have to learn the Constitution they took an oath to. You get all the corruption and deceit and chasing mammon, chasing the dollar. They fall, and where they're supposed to be held to a higher account. Spell is supposed to be held to a higher standard because of that oath. And we, the people, we are the ones who have to hold them to it.
Yeah, but the reason why they don't. But the reason why they don't hold themselves to a higher standard is because the people don't hold themselves to a higher standard. Because remember, government is nothing but a reflection of the people of the nation. Because who takes those offices? If the more evil the nation becomes, the more evil the government shall be.
Yes, that's correct. Well, I'm doing my part to change that. And I urge everybody else listening, if you're cut from the cloth, I urge you to explore it, educate yourself better than they are. Learn, you're in this group for a reason. Pastor here's got some incredibly valuable tidbits. He reads it, and he digests it and spits it out to all the baby birds. But you know what? You got to read it yourself. If you're going to grow up and be a full-fledged fly with the eagles, you can't have Pastor spitting it into your mouth for you much. I mean, it's great as community. I love the community. I love you guys. I love Brian. I love your group. But at some certain point, you have to fly out of the nest, and you got to do it yourself. So educate yourself. Learn what other people are doing, and learn what works for you. Don't be afraid to fall. A failure is just one step closer to success.
Yeah. Don't be the devil of the court either. Don't be going accusing the people of being corrupt. I mean, the devil is the accuser. The Bible says that. So are you going to be that judge's devil saying he's corrupt when you might have been in the wrong on something and all he did? It's somebody told me this analogy. He says, in the game of life, when you have something and it doesn't work, they just send you back to the beginning of the line to start over. Don't look at it as a punishment. Look at it as going back to the beginning of the line to start over because you messed up somewhere along the way.
Now, and I'm going to go back to something I said earlier. You never accuse them of corrupt. Don't confront like that. They got the guns, they got the jails, they got the power, and they can run a game on you. What you can do though is if you just point, if they're doing something corrupt, ask a question that points to the underlying corruption. Just ask a question. It's okay to ask. They might answer or they might be quiet and then take that home. And when they're going to bed last night, they're going to go, dang, I'm corrupt. So sometimes asking the question, you're planting that seed. And we're supposed to plant seeds. Some fall in cracks, some land on concrete, some don't grow. But all you need is one or two there to grow.
An acquaintance of mine, Anwar, judge said one day in court to him, "Are you one of those sovereign citizens?" And he just looked at the judge and said, "Well, Your Honor, would you please define what you mean by that term to make sure I have the same understanding you do? Because based on my understanding, the only sovereign citizen in this courtroom is you, sir. You're the sovereign of the court and the citizen of the state." The judge went dead silent, didn't even answer the question. He didn't say another word on that subject.
Yeah, I usually answer, I go, I don't understand how such a thing can be. That's a conflict of terms. How can you be a sovereign and be a citizen at the same time? It's like Jumbo Shrimp or Microsoft Works. I try to throw in a little humor. Yeah. If you throw in a little humor, you can lighten up a very tense moment. If you got a knack for cracking little jokes, puns like that, suddenly they'll drop it and move on. But yeah, and again, you can't object and you can't move the court and eject the court if you're not a party. And you can traverse so easy just by answering as that named person.
I don't agree with that. You can object in the court even if you're not a party. But your objection better be along those lines.
Yeah.
So,
what did I do?
Anybody got any questions for Bubba on his case, on what he was talking about earlier on this case, for what he's been going through?
I would ask, what are the 3 notices? I saw the first one. I'm on the very beginning of Class 1, Part 2. I feel like my answer is going to be answered in there.
The 3 notices are not nothing special, okay? And here's the thing about the administrative process that a lot of people don't understand. And I know Bubba, he does. Jim, he understands it. Every letter you write is part of the administrative process. When they stop responding, that's when you send 3 notices. Hey, you got my first letter. You got my letter. Now you're in default. I'm going to give you an opportunity to cure it. You resend the letter they didn't respond to. When they still don't respond, you put them in default by sending the notice of default plus the original letter. That's all it is. Because as long as they're responding, the administrative process is still going on. The administrative process is you building your file to go to court. That's what the IRS does.
Yeah, that goes back to a ancient maxim, a lawful maxim. I think I'm looking at here, qui tacet concertire videtur. It's a Latin legal maxim that says he who is silent is understood to consent. When you have an obligation to respond and you don't respond, then you're agreeing with whatever I put out there. I like to say, if I stood up in a restaurant in front of an audience and I pointed at a friend of mine and I said, he's gay, ha, and I sit down, you had better stand up and correct the record. Because after you sit there silently, after a little while, you know what? I don't care if you've been with a man or whatever before, but you're now gay in the minds of everybody there. You have been determined to be gay. And that's a funny way to put it so people understand it. But basically, that principle of law, understand that they use that against us. It is recognized when you go into a foreclosure, they give you 30 days to respond. Or when someone buys a debt, Citibank sells your debt to another, or a lender sells your debt to somebody else, or they're going to sell your debt to a collections company. They're going to send it to you, and they're going to say, to dispute your debt, you get what? 30 days. If you don't dispute their claim that you have a debt, you know what? You've had your time. You didn't respond, and you win. They win. They get to go ahead with a foreclosure, or they get to go into collections. And some of that, and I use that. I'd love to tell a little bit about my foreclosure case, the first one that I beat, where, I was doing the April Charney stuff, the show me your note. And then basically the law says if someone comes in to foreclose and they assume to be the holder in due course of the original note, meaning they bought the note or they originated the note or whatever, that note and mortgage, if they just put in there a photocopy or a scan or a digitized PDF file or something, and they put that in, you always, if you don't say anything, they can proceed with that as the note. But there was a lot of people, because what was happening is back in 2007, 2008, when The Big Short when I don't know if you've seen the movie The Big Short. That was the story of my life then. I went through 8 foreclosures. Basically, I was doing April Charney stuff. She's a woman who developed a process out of Jacksonville, Florida. I think Brian knows her. But basically, I go in there and I say, no, I want to see the bona fide bond paper note with the wet ink signature. I want to see that they're holders in due course of the bona fide actual note with my wet ink signature on it. Okay.
Jim, that's actually a maxim of law that says similar is not the same.
Right. Bingo. So it took them several months to go through where the tranches go through they had it pulled it out of a box in some place in Hoboken, New Jersey. I don't know. But I got a message that the actual bona fide note was in the docket in Clearwater, Florida. I'm not going to go into a whole bunch of this stuff, but if you guys can glean what I'm saying through this, then I'm not in violation of my agreement. I'm not teaching this stuff, but I'm telling my story. Well, I went down to Clearwater and I pulled the file and it hit me. I looked at the notary. Now, you guys that know me know I teach contract law. I'm that 1 out of 99.9. I'm that 0.01%. When I get a document, I sit it down and I start with the fine print. I pull out a pad and a pen, a ruler, so I know what line I'm on, and a magnifying glass, because I got these old eyes. And I'll go line by line, and I read everything, and I jot down notes and questions that I have along the way. So and I remembered this when I saw the signature, this notary, because I had he had come, I don't know if you guys have ever gotten a note or a mortgage or borrowed a car or anything like that. They'll bring a big old stack of documents with Post-it notes. The notary goes, sign here, sign here, sign here, sign here, sign here, initial here, initial here. Okay, thank you, bye. He just wants to get in and out and make his $50, okay? And this guy had come to my house in 2003 when I did a refi. And he did that. And I said, and what did I do? I pull out my pen, my pad, my ruler, my magnifying glass, and I sat down at my desk, turned on the light, and he goes, wait, what are you doing? I said, well, if you want me to sign this, I have to have full knowledge. And to have full knowledge, I got to read every word and get all my questions answered. And he goes, no, I don't have time for that, dude. I said, well, that's okay. Just leave the documents here with me. I'll go through it all this morning and this afternoon. I'll call the loan officer. I'll get all my questions answered. Come on back tomorrow. I'll sign it in front of you, and you can take off. He goes, no, I can't do that, man. I got 6 more to do after you, and I can't leave it here. I said, well, we got a problem. I can't sign if I don't read every word and have full knowledge, right? Remember I said the 3 requirements of a signature, and this separates it from an autograph. Don't say you put your autograph on it, because an autograph means nothing. You put that on a football or a guitar or a photograph. It's a scribble that looks like a name but means nothing. A scribble that's a signature has 3 requirements in law: full knowledge, free consent, and good faith. Right? Full knowledge, you know everything in it. Free consent, you did it under your own volition. Nobody forced you. And good faith, you have fully intended to do everything you agreed to do on that piece of paper. You agreed to perform. Well, so this notary, he said, well, can't you just go there and just scribble your name on it? Can't you go through and just scribble for me? I said, now I looked at him and I go, oh, all you want is a scribble? You know, he goes, yeah. That will a scribble work? He goes, yeah. I said, well, then what you're going to have to do is open up your notary book, and over in the margin, right next to where you put down my name and the documents that I signed, I want you to write no full knowledge, without full knowledge. He goes, I said, can you do that? He goes, yeah, whatever. I just want to get out of here. So I had him write that in the margin, and then I proceeded to scribble on every page. Okay. Fast forward. That was my flashback. Fast forward to when I looked at this original note that I put into the case. I said, wait a minute. So I took this thing, I went home and I crafted up an affidavit. The following is true, correct, complete, and non-misleading. A, I have looked at the document that it was identified as the bona fide note. B, I've reviewed every page of the document. C, there is no bona fide signature on any page whatsoever. Further, affiant saith not, signed, sealed before a notary. I put it into the docket, the foreclosure proceedings. I served it on opposing counsel. I published it for 30 days in a local newspaper. And I took a copy and I pinned it on the bulletin board down at Pinellas County Courthouse. Well, 30 days passed. That 30 days, if you don't specify an amount of time, it's customary to say 30 days is an adequate amount of time for someone to formulate a response and contest your affidavit. 30 days passed, silence. 60 days passed, silence. We're going about 75 days before the next hearing, and I show up. My hair's down to I look like I went in there with a flannel shirt, and my hair's down to my elbows. I look like I just stepped off a Grateful Dead parking lot. And I'm in a whole room of attorneys. I think I was the only principal in there. Everybody else was all attorneys for the banks. The judge had got up that morning, and he was half asleep, and he's just grinding away the slow wheels of justice, the so-called justice. You know, Bank of America versus Smith. The attorney stands up. We're here for Bank of America. Smith failed to appear. Okay, we're going to set sale date for June 5th. Citibank versus Jones, you know, kind of going through the docket. They're going through the list of cases. And then then they called the case with me, and Iberia Bank versus me. And Iberia Bank stood up, and they were like, this Jim, he's such a horrible guy. He has no integrity. He didn't pay his debts. He didn't agree. He pays agreed, and blah, blah, blah. He's a deadbeat, and we want to foreclose. And then I stood up, and I just said to the judge, I said, Your Honor, I said, I have no idea why we're here today. And they kind of looked, and I said, me and the bank, we're in total agreement on this. And so I don't think there's anything for you to adjudicate over. They were like, what? I said, here, let me read this affidavit into the record. And I read it word for word, put it in the record. I said, this was submitted and filed, certified mail to opposing counsel on such and such a day. It was put in the docket. So I know that they emailed him a copy too. I put it in the public organ. I did it publicly. I put it on the courthouse steps. I put it out there. I said, 30 days to pass, 60 days to pass. Here's 75 days. And my affidavit stands as a fact of law. They have failed to contest it. And I quoted that, and I threw that Latin, and, my ego had me speak Latin in front of a bunch of attorneys. They're amazed that this hippie is speaking Latin. But I threw that in there, and I said, considering the situation that we all agree, it's clear that the bank has no standing in this court since they don't have the signed document. They don't have standing to foreclose. And therefore, 12B6, they've failed to state a claim upon which relief can be granted. I'm going to go ahead and make a motion that we just dismiss with prejudice and quit wasting the court's valuable time. Now, uproar. The judge, who was sound asleep prior to this, his eyes were open, and I swear to God, he was chuckling. He was laughing ear to ear. He was smiling. I think he was impressed that somebody actually came in and beat the bank. Someone came in with a retort that would hold water. The funniest thing I've ever seen in a courtroom was what happened next. Opposing counsel, the attorney for the bank, he jumps up. He's all flustered. His brill cream hair is all kind of. He started gobbling like a turkey. He didn't know what to say. He's gobbling. I'm looking at that. I was starting to laugh myself. He started rambling. Your Honor, wait. We're ill prepared to deal with this line of defense. We're going to ask this court, please, for 90 more days to continue, blah, 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 blah. And the judge smiles, looks at me, and he says, Counselor, you have superior knowledge of the law, and you failed to respond to this affidavit. Nope, you've had ample time. I'm going to go ahead and find, in Mr. Heben's behalf, we're going to dismiss this case with prejudice. Case closed. You're free to go. And I should have listened to. I wanted as a post story. That was the beginning of the war against me by the deep state, because I beat foreclosures. I put it in a quick YouTube channel. I started teaching it. That's around the time that Brian and I were hanging out when we first were doing a gathering of the tribes, and I was doing a lot of stuff with Boris. But I started teaching. They tried to get me for practicing law without a license, but since I never charged, I'm not doing it for money. I figured, I lost 8 properties. I lost $2.4 million in assets by the banks and their little foreclosure game. And I found the Achilles heel in their whole line. And I started helping people do what I did and take the banks to task. And I never charged. And they couldn't get me for practicing law. And that's why they trumped up I want to say bullshit. Can I say bullshit? I'm a pastor. I guess, a bull crap line of attack just to defame me, bring a felony against me, kind of discredit me. They went into attack on me and drained me of my bank account that I had at the time and made life, like I said, Lisa had gone in with some, she had tried some stuff with a Christian flag, some sovereign citizen Christian type of stuff, bringing in the Christian flag, putting in, not crossing the bar, and putting in some Jubilee paperwork that obviously fell there. They don't recognize any of that, fell flat on its face. And she went underground while I fought this bullshit attack on my own for about 8 months. And therein lies that whole history. But it does show you they use in foreclosures. I want to illustrate the point. Silence is assent. There's silence when they've got an obligation to respond and they don't, which is what an affidavit is, a statement of fact. And they have to rebut the facts in that affidavit. And if they don't rebut, what they don't rebut stands as a fact in law. They use it against us all the time. There's no problem with us using it against them. And the more I do this paperwork, the more I'm convinced the trustees all know it. And that's why they will never respond to anything you send them. They know it's right. They're not going to get involved. It's better if I don't know silent assent in the administrative process, then I'll never see the remedy. And they're just going to leave it up to me to dig my own grave or to find my own rat hole out of the prison. And they would rather just have one cockroach like me get out of the prison than appear, make it clear, and open the doors so we can all get off the prison. Anybody else? Any other questions? I'm happy to answer while I'm here.
Now, this whole thing about agency, I can tell you now, if you've done something, especially something serious, it ain't going to work. Because even the judges, they have a certain moral compass. Okay? And it's not going to work. But when you've got minor traffic stuff or maybe where there's no victim, then yeah, this is actually some really good stuff. Now, using the agent argument on a mortgage, no, you don't want to do that. Because then they're going to say, well, we need proof. We need paperwork. You're just going to end up killing yourself on that contract. That's why I keep saying about understanding UCC 3-402. 402 is the signature of the represented person. So it doesn't, in that instance, it don't matter if you sign the name. Okay? But people have this belief that if I sign the name, somehow it is all about me. Because they've believed that is them for so long. Can't be you.
Yeah, I won the first one. The first one I did, I'll be quick, and then you can ask the question. I did the first one just under duress. But at the very moment when they pull up to my curb, I'm the general agent. I always want to stay in the mindset of knowing who I am in relation to what they want to do. All of their jurisdiction, they're an artificial entity. They can only deal with artificial entities when they come up as an artificial entity. I'm going to be a real living being man, and all I can be is an agent of that trust. I'm not a trust, and I'm not property in a trust. I'm just an agent. So that's why now if they want me to sign a ticket, I scribble general agent on it, and then I start my administrative process.
I was just going to say.
Someone had to ask a question.
Yeah, I was just going to say, it sounds like you're really making some headway in this, and I'm very happy for you.
I like to think so.
Yeah, you're actually doing it, so.
Yeah, he's beat the one case. Now he's got a freaking another case with how many charges?
I have an outstanding total of 10 tickets in 2 different counties.
And it's not like he's out there running around speeding, trying to provoke the cops. He's not doing that.
No. I One of the things is the first one, I got a ticket because they didn't like that I'm carrying my Bobcat on a trailer with 5 lug nuts. It was rated for 7,500 pounds. That's what that axle weight allows for. My Bobcat is about 7,000. Now, I did have 2 attachments. I had a bucket and a grapple. So I know I was probably over 8,000 pounds, and he thought my tires were too flat, so he pulled me over for that. And which is a legitimate concern, but again, that isn't a reason to demand ID. The other guy, a chain, he said, was hanging off the trailer that I just got now to go back up with my Bobcat. This place is giving me a trailer for free as a to assist in my nonprofit ministry. My 508c1a, that's another thing. But I had a chain, and I guess it was dangling, and a couple sparks are flying. That isn't a crime. That isn't a crime. And if I hold them to task that they've got to provide a reasonable articulable suspicion of a crime, that means a misdemeanor or felony. It doesn't mean no blinker. It doesn't mean some minor infraction or jaywalking. No, you can't demand an ID. There's no stop and demand ID state that doesn't exist. So you got to hold them to task to that. And so it's given me all these and of course, if you don't do it like they get butt hurt when you stand up to their ego and bring your facts and bring your questions. They don't like that, and that's why when I wouldn't give them a name and they booked me, they threw me in solitary for 3 days until they could figure out who they thought I was. But I wasn't playing by their rules. So they're going to teach me a lesson. Well, the Lord is with me, and when the Lord's with me, who can be against me? It's time to, I'm going to use this to teach them a lesson. And the big picture is, once they learn the lesson, they're going to learn a lesson. Just leave that guy the hell alone. Leave him alone. Don't poke the bear. And then we'll all be happy and at peace.
Amen.
Amen.
I'm going to tell you what woke me up to this is when I realized Social Security was a trust. It's many years I was studying trust law. I mean, I purchased Yusavel's webinars, which I will endorse his webinars on trust. He teaches trust law similar to what I do, but he still only concentrates on express trust when there's actually 3 different types of trust. And most of your teachers on trust don't know about the resulting trusts and the constructive trusts. They don't typically ever discuss those because they don't know. But it was like the one trust everybody ignored, even though you would hear him mention it, because I'd heard it mentioned, was that Social Security is a trust. Well, if it's a trust, trust law still applies. Can't get around it, because if it's either a trust or it is not a trust. Two things cannot be correct at the same time. So if it's a trust, and Congress as trustees have the authority under trust law to create other trusts, and they exercised their authority to create a trust called Social Security, then trust law still applies. And if you're not the grantor of that trust, and you're not the trustee, and you're not the beneficiary, then the only thing you could be is the agent that is operating it on behalf of the United States, so they can make it profitable.
If you guys want to, I don't know how you feel about this, Pastor, because I don't know everybody who's listening here with me, and I'm a little iffy about taking my paperwork and just redacting it and then putting all of the 3-part package out for everybody to see.
I know it's in the members group, and the members can see that. And to me, I'm fine with that.
Members group. Oh, you're going to have to remind me how to use this dang software again.
Remember when you was a member studying the agency stuff, and there was a membership group?
Yeah.
Yeah. I know it's in there, and to get access to it there, you have to be a member.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if am I still a member? Or I let that time out. No.
Yeah, you let that time out.
I let it time out. Okay. Well, I can still I can get it to you.
But if you want me to drop it in there, I can drop it once you get it all redacted.
Yeah, I think I'm happy to share that. I just again, I just want to caution everybody, just don't boilerplate.
I'm not a fan of putting out somebody's paperwork in the normal chat, because you got too many people in here that will try to use it as a template. I hate to say that, but that's the case. The majority of the people in these communities, now I'm not going to say most of y'all on here are like this, so don't take it personally, but most of the people in these communities, they were being a heathen when they got in trouble. They're looking for a template, hoping that template will fix their situation so they can go right back to being a heathen.
Yeah. No, that ain't going to work.
No, it ain't.
Mm-hmm. We will trip up on ourselves. What did I do? I put up a link to my stop that I filmed, and I'm just looking down here, and it has the YouTube link, but it doesn't go anywhere. Does it?
Yeah, it should.
Yeah, it does. Okay.
Yeah.
It's just not showing the page, I guess. I don't know.
Probably, if you're not paying, it's probably showing you a commercial first.
Oh.
Yeah, the links will go to your channel. The links will go to your channel. But the difference is because you're not paying for YouTube Premium, you got a commercial that's going to play first.
Oh, okay. Well, here, let me put in my channel. Let's see if I can do that. Yeah, it doesn't show a page there either, but there you go. Georgia Watchdog.
Yeah. You need to go out, Luna. Come on. An agency is a biblical principle. It's like you got these people in these communities arguing about titles of nobility like it's an evil thing. Well, guess what? God created titles. John, what was his title? The Baptist. What was Paul's title? The Apostle. What was Jesus' title? The Christ. The government, the system that's been created primarily is mirroring the biblical principles. Now, Satan may have twisted some things, but he still has to go within certain guidelines. Go look at the book of Job. He said to the devil, yeah, you can do this, this, and this, and this, but you can't do this. Now, that's where I agree with Boris. We're technically all in our own book of Job.
I can see that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's why most of these arguments people make out there, I just think are foolish. And if you have pushback from a government agent in court about whether or not that's your name, says, wait a minute. You yourself act as an agent. You're an agent of the state. You're not the state. You're the judge. The judge isn't as a title to an office that makes you an agent of the state. So you can't say you don't understand agency because you live it.
Bars.
Huh? Do what,
I
Charlie?
said bars. That was a bar.
And that was the one thing that when that started clicking, all I had to do was find a few pieces of information. When I first come to the realization of what Social Security was, I said, wait a minute. Now I got to find who the trustees are. A friend of mine actually sent me the link to that page. That's the first time in all my years of study I ever saw that signatories to the trust reports. And then I said, okay, what's the next logical question? Who's the grantor? Who's the beneficiary? Because we already know who the trustees are. I did a FOIA request, and they unequivocally refused to answer that question. Who is the grantor and who is the beneficiary? And I asked the third question, who's the registered agent? And I went to my congressman. My congressman went to the ADM at my local Social Security office, and they refused to answer those three questions. That tells you a lot.
I want to know what the res is too. If you're created, you can't have a trust without res.
The res is the estate. The res the res is not technically the infant itself, the placenta and umbilical cord. The res was the estate that was created in probate court.
But I want to hear it out of their mouths.
They'll never tell you that.
No.
The only way you're ever going to find that information is you got to get a complete and total unredacted file from all the levels of vital records. And they will not let you see that. An acquaintance of mine up in Illinois, she almost got arrested trying to see the probate file. She found out about it. She went to the probate court where the event happened and tried to see the file. They called the sheriff on her. She almost got arrested. And her argument was, said, wait a minute. It's my file? They said, no, it's ours.
Right. Boris and I did a road trip up to Tallahassee. And actually what we were doing is we were doing some other fun stuff under the Army Field Manual, something 95, and it talks about surrender. And we were surrendering the person because under the Emergency Banking Act, basically they say the U.S. citizen, that person is an enemy of the state. It doesn't say it like that, but read it and read what they're saying and put the pieces together. And they're basically saying it's an enemy of the state. That's why their bank's able to do this stuff. During the bankruptcy, that basically was a bankruptcy action. So we were like, okay, fine. So we took the birth certificate. We took all this stuff up there and wrote up a formal notice of surrender. I tried to serve it on the local municipality because the first one you're supposed to, you can't go direct to the Department of Vital Records and go direct to the governor. Pam Bondi was the attorney general and Pete, what's his name? Skeletor was the governor at the time. I can't remember his name. The bald guy. And we went up there and we tried to give, after getting shut down by Treasure Island, where I lived in Florida, we tried. We said, well, we exhausted that. Now we have to go to the governor. So we went up there and we tried to provide a surrender. And then once you surrender, then you are a protected person on the battlefield. Once you're surrendered, then they have to take care of you. They can't consider you an enemy anymore. And so we were trying to get into that position with the state. And boy, oh boy, Pam Bondi was there. We went in there and said, we want to show her. She would not come out. We tried to give them paperwork. We sat in the lobby and they came and gave it to us. They said, we can't take this. I said, oh yeah, you can here. Army Field Manager. No. That was like it was radioactive. They would not touch it. It was crazy the way they were treating it.
Jim, let me add to that story. All right. because while we were sitting there in the governor's waiting room, sitting in his
Oh,
office.
you were there. Yeah, you
Yeah.
were there.
I kept hearing this tick noise, right? And what we ended up doing was leaving the paperwork with the secretary, right?
Hey there.
Well,
Good evening to you too.
When we left the paperwork with the secretary, I mentioned to her, I said, I keep hearing a tick noise. I said, do you have a timestamp machine running? And she says, yeah, that's the timestamp machine. I said, good. Could you please timestamp my documents that I'm leaving with you? And she was like, no problem. She went and timestamped them, right? About 3 or 4 weeks later, because the only address they had was mine. About 3 or 4 weeks later, I got back in the mail all of your paperwork and whatever, if Boris submitted any as well. I got back all that paperwork in the mail, but guess what paperwork they did not return to me?
Yours.
My time-stamped letters, right. Yep.
Wow.
I did something similar. I sent my well, not my birth certificate. I sent the birth certificate back to the registrar, and she called me. She called me and she asked me, what did I want her to do with it? I said, I don't know. I don't want it. It doesn't belong to me. And it belongs to Vital Statistics. So then I can't remember if she mentioned sending it to the state Vital, because I sent it to my county Vital Statistics. I'm not sure if I can't remember if she mentioned it or if I mentioned it, but she sent it to the state Vital Statistic, and nobody sent it back to me. I don't have a birth certificate anymore. Well, on me. I'm not the holder.
Now, personally, you have to be careful because you can close out your ability to interface with any of that stuff. And in the way they've designed everything, it does become difficult to operate. Okay? So if you think about it, if it is true, I have not found 100% evidence that says it's true, but I am of the opinion that it could be considered like a warehouse receipt, right? And since everything's in commerce, maybe you should send them a what is it called? Oh, what is it called? Let me see here. Let me go to forms. I'll tell you here in a second. See, when you get one, I've actually tried to do this. Go to forms, form finder.
I still have my husband's and I still have my kids. I be doing stuff for myself to see what happens.
Yeah, I understand. It's a delivery receipt for warehouse goods or something like that. In other words, a delivery receipt. Did it come to you? Yes. That way they know you received it. Mm-hmm. And under a delivery receipt, you're holding their asset, which means you can also charge for expenses. Let me see here. I'll share my screen here in just a second. There it is. Now, a warehouse receipt, a document evidencing title of goods stored for someone else, especially a receipt issued by a person engaged in the business of storing goods for a fee. A warehouse receipt, which is considered a document of title, may be a negotiable instrument and is often used for financing with inventory as security. It also says see bailment. bailment. A delivery of personal property by one person, the bailor, to another, the bailee, who holds the property for a certain purpose, usually under an express or implied in fact contract. You notice it doesn't say implied in law, it says implied in fact. My brief that I'm working on finalizing to go to the Federal Court of Claims is arguing that point right there, an implied in fact contract. Unlike a sale or gift of personal property, a bailment involves a change in possession, but not in title. Title goes to ownership. Well, if the state's the owner, they still own it. They still hold the title. Possession's now in your instance. You've been working for free all this time.
Damn.
That's why I go here. I wrote this article just the other night. It was a short article. Somebody asked me about the legal definition of baby. Well, Black's Law doesn't do that. But through the course of events, these words are the only ones in Black's 12th that are defined where the term baby comes up, right? So what did I find? I found this. It said, see bond number 3. Well, I said, interesting. So let's go here. Let's see. First off, let me do this before I get too deep in that. Let me go here. Let me go here. Go to Files. Federal Securities Law, 4th edition. Let's see. Definition of security. Right here. That's right here. Okay. I look at that list no different than I look at a ingredients list on a ketchup bottle. Whatever is the most in the ketchup bottle is going to be the first one in the list, right? So when it comes to securities, whatever holds the most value is going to be the first in the list. The term security means any note. Well, that makes sense why it would be first. Promissory notes, Federal Reserve notes, stock. Well, we have a stock market. Treasury stock. Well, we do. They sell T-bills. Bonds. Yep. Then I saw this term here, debenture. Everything else, evidence of indebtedness. Everybody knows kind of what that is. We talk about it for those taking the accounting class. We've talked about it there. But that term debenture, okay? So I said a few years back, what is a debenture? A debenture, it is Latin, they are owing, passive present third person plural to owe after the supposed wording in early certificates of indebtedness. So a debenture is a certificate of indebtedness, which are thought to have begun with debenture. So the first definition, a debt secured only by the debtor's earning power, not by a lien on any specific asset. An instrument acknowledging such a debt. And then 3, a bond that is backed only by the general credit and financial reputation of the corporate issuer, not by a lien on corporate assets. Okay, so now let's go back to baby bond. Now you saw a minute ago it said see bond number 3. So let's go to bond number 3. So here's number 1, an obligation or promise. Here's number 2. I like the way they did it in the 11th, 10th, 11th, and 12th edition because they put everything that's generally the same, some type of bond, all in the same list. Now, Right here. A long-term interest-bearing debt instrument issued by a corporation or governmental entity, usually to provide for a particular financial need, especially such an instrument in which the debt is secured by a lien on the issuer's property. And then what does it say? CF, compare to debenture. Now, it's now, just down a little bit more, baby bond. A bond having a small face value, usually less than $500 to $1,000. That one doesn't really apply. Number 2, a voucher or contribution deposited on behalf of a child into a trust fund, Social Security, or individual savings account from which funds cannot be withdrawn until the child reaches adulthood. I said, that just gives me more evidence to think that a birth certificate is a bond, but it is a debenture. And what type of debenture? Well, it was created by the infant estate. So that would mean it could possibly be a baby bond. And that baby bond would be the res of the trust. And if you go into the Social Security Act, the initial funding of the account, if I'm not mistaken, is $1.5 million. Then you got to go into the Title 31, Section 363 of the CFR, where it tells you how the Treasury and the custodian, which would be the Federal Reserve and the Treasury, have the power to invest monies from that trust until the age of 18. Then it goes dormant because it's expected that maybe you will learn so you can do it. Which you are, you just don't realize it when you're going out creating all this chattel paper. But how can the trust be compensated if the agents of the trust never tell anyone what they're doing, aka the agent's job?
Hey, I'd like to throw out here it's about 7:00, and tonight I is family night. I feed my 85-year-old mom. I got to do barbecue, so I'm going to have to wrap it up here. Is there any other parting comments, shots, questions, anything like that someone has for me before I have to leave?
I'm just waiting to hear what happens when they take it to trial, since they've kicked it up to the trial stage, because the other court's like, yeah, we don't want to mess with this. I'm waiting to hear about that.
Oh, you'll hear about it when it happens. You'll be one of the first to know. You, Brian, there'll be a handful of people that'll know. I'll come on and share again and continue the story.
Okay.
Thanks for sharing.
It's just more.
I
asked him to come on because it's like I do like hearing different people's perspectives on how they're implementing this and seeing the results they're seeing.
And and I like to share it because if I can help be a blessing to any of y'all, that's what I'm here for. I pray that the Holy Spirit moves me to be a blessing to all those I come in contact with every day. I mean, that's a tall order and it rarely happens, but if I can be a blessing to all of y'all, then I've done his job. Amen.
Well, Brian Parker, you got anything you want to add? He must have got distracted. So, well, if y'all don't have any questions for Bubba, then I guess he's going to go see his family right quick and go eat. So, other than that, we'll be on here. We'll hang out.
All right. Y'all have fun. God bless y'all. Thank you.
Talk to you later,
Adios.
man.
God bless.
All right. Bye. Thank you.
See, it's a beautifully designed system when you can start seeing how it is set up. But you got to be willing to stand. You can't let fear knock you off of it. If you let fear knock you off, the devil wins. That's pretty much the bottom line.
Right. I'll never give up. I want to figure things out so that when my kids reach age, my oldest is 7. When my kids reach the age of 18, they know how to handle business. But they'll never figure it out if I don't. Well, I'm not gonna say they never will, but I feel like I
No,
can make it
you're right.
easier.
No, you're right. They won't if you don't.
Okay.
Because the
I thought,
education system is not designed to teach you that way. And technically
hell no.
people come on here and complain and they say they blame the education system. No, you can't blame the education system. The education system is only designed to teach you how to learn. Now, where I do agree that where the education system is fault is it's not fulfilling its obligation. It's actually frustrating the learning process to where the people don't want to learn.
Heck yeah.
So it's not that they have the obligation to teach you this stuff. They don't. What they do have the obligation to do is teach you how to learn. And they are failing in that aspect. Because there is too much information out there for the education system to have the responsibility of teaching you everything. Sooner or later you gotta accept responsibility for yourself and continue your education and learn once you get out of the education system. And whose responsibility is it to teach their children? It's the parents. But the
Yep.
parents have gotten lazy because why? They're trying to keep up with the Joneses and have the nicest stuff, so they both got to work and they got to. And but we can't afford it. No, you could if you change your lifestyle. But people don't
Right.
want to give up their. They don't want to give up their nice stuff. My wife's a stay-at-home mother. My wife stays, and I'm lucky. I mean, owning my own truck, doing what I do, God has blessed me to be able to do that for my wife. Does that mean it's always easy? No, it's not.
Hell no. I stay home with mine too. They right here in my
Oh,
lap.
I kind of figured that about you.
They always around. But that's the good thing though, is that they hear this stuff. Like they don't, they're not in every webinar with me, but like
Hmm.
they're getting some of it based off of what they always hear. Like if I ask who runs the government, they're gonna tell you the people.
Hmm. Yeah, Bubba, he's been doing this longer than I have, and it is when I first met him. He he had found some of my YouTube videos, so he reached out to me because of that. Then we got to talking, and I was really surprised on some of the things he had done, like when he done a full settlement and closure process on that. But I didn't like that. I didn't agree with that. I mean, I think that you run that's a personal choice, to be honest. I personally, they've made it so difficult to operate in the system without it that if you do that, you run the risk of not being able to operate, which he's found that out. He can't go get a loan. He can't do anything, right? He has to. His wife still has all her stuff, so if he needs to get a loan, he has to go through his wife. So if they have purposely made it that difficult and it is not yours and it is not you, then we need to learn how the rules are played so we can make them settle their obligations and do their job
Mm-hmm.
instead of
How y'all play
instead of holding
Monopoly?
it to us. Yeah, it's a big freaking game of Monopoly. That is true.
You need that token.
You need that token to play on the board. Let's see here. I got your message, Dawn. I'll can, let's see. So anybody got any questions? And Brian Parker, since you're here, you can add to the group You always got a lot of good things to add. Unless they got a phone call and it's busy.
No, I'm here. How you doing? Listen, man.
Yeah, this agent, I know you haven't talked to some of the people in here that, like I mentioned earlier, like Daniel. Some of his stories is funny. He converted one of their own in this argument.
Believe you were talking about me.
Yep, he did. I was. He had child support call him up, and he started talking about the name and made her go get the her Social Security card. She didn't want to talk to him after that when she saw it was real. But he has held child support back from being able to start a case by using these arguments. Hey, it's the government's. It's not mine. And then you got Scotty on his deceased wife's estate. And Scotty, I got to give you credit. I don't know how you handle it, because if I lost my wife, y'all wouldn't see me for a while.
Well, I went off the reservation for a while, but it has its ups and downs.
I don't doubt that, because I know that if I lost my wife, I'd have a hard time.
Well, there's a mention of, you need that token to operate on the board, otherwise it can be difficult. And essentially what I did, I just looked around me and saw the way the system runs. And people are opening businesses and getting a DBA for their business as a representative of that business and stuff all the time. And so I just went and did a DBA, and it said you can't do your legal name. And I said, okay, we'll see about that. And I got down to the box that said, was it incorporated, a trust, is it unincorporated? And I was like, ooh, I bet that's the key. And it probably was, because they've since removed it. But I DBA'd it as unincorporated. And next morning, I get an email from Secretary of State. It went through, and they had me listed as being the owner of the name. So I was like, okay, anybody wants a contract with that name now, since I'm listed as the owner, I can decide whether or not I choose to contract with you or not. And what I did was just the same thing they do when you're born. What do? They go and they grab a name very similar to yours. So that's exactly what I did. I grabbed a name very similar to the legal name and just play the same game right back on them. Now, they don't want to probably ever see me in court, because there's going to be a big argument, and they're not going to want to have the gallery hear the argument about whose name is it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they don't want to have that argument, because if they have that argument, then it automatically, that means all the obligations and suretyship goes back on the federal government.
Yeah. And when I did it, also just resigned as agent for their legal entity and told them, hey, if you think it needs a representative, I recommend you get one forthwith, because it's not me anymore.
Now, I did the DBA, and here's what happened when I did mine. Now, I actually did an LLC in the name, and then did the Minnesota assumed name, and then did the legal announcement in the paper where it was supposed to go for the allotted amount of time, and then did the DBA in my home state, right? All my business documents are only signed with my given name and my title of pastor, right? When I went to my home county recorder's office to do my DBA, she looked at my paperwork and said, your name don't match. I can't file this. I said, oh, yes, you can. She gets on the phone, calls the clerk, the head clerk, and the head clerk on the phone says, He can use whatever name he wants. It doesn't have to match. Oh, okay, I'll file this right away.
Yeah, those people are all in the learning process too.
Yeah, they're just learning. They don't necessarily know.
You know, people get so worried about going and dealing, even with somebody at the DMV, for instance, over issues. They don't understand. These people are people just like any typical American. They want to get to work as late as possible, do as little as possible while they're there, and leave as early as possible. And in the meantime, they're not thinking about you or your paperwork. No, they're thinking about, hey, when I get home, I got to throw the laundry in the dryer. Oh, should I stop by the grocery store and pick up dinner on the way home? You know what I mean? They're not James Bond out to get you.
Correct. A lot of times they don't know. I mean, you can guarantee the lower they are on the total poll, the less they probably know.
Yeah, absolutely. You know what? The only interaction I had with somebody that I knew, really knew, that wasn't sitting on the bench, was I had a judge order me to talk to the county commissioner and discuss things with the county commissioner to help explain something to an attorney. And the three of us sat there, and the attorney learned, and when I spoke, the county commissioner was shaking her head, yes, he's correct. That's how this works. You know what I mean? And so I found that kind of fascinating. Although in that conversation, if you were to watch the dynamics of the conversation, you would think there was only two people sitting there, because the county commissioner never once looked at me.
No, when you get to where you know, they're not going to look at you. They're probably not going to look at you because they probably feel guilty because they know what's been doing. That's why there is a different, separate class of people, right? Those in the system that know, and when you figure it out, and they know they've been doing you wrong this whole time, it's no surprise.
Well, also that county commissioner, I'm sure, was an attorney, and so her and the other attorney that was sitting there, they were on the same team. And guess what? No, it's like George Carlin said, it's a big club and you're not in it. Well, folks, I think I am going to take off here. This has been an enlightening call, and I'm sure it was a lot to digest for a lot of people. You might want to listen to it 2 or 3 times, and always have a notepad when you're listening into things.
Oh, yeah. A lot of them do.
Heck yeah.
All right, everybody. Be blessed. We'll talk to you later.
Talk to you later, Brian. And y'all can find him. I shared his YouTube channel, but he's also got a group on Facebook called Tactical Sovereignty.
And I've got a Substack also I started up. That's Brian Parker Tactical Sovereignty also. Brian with a Y. Scottish, not Irish. But I started a Substack because it really looks like people on Substack are being left alone. You can post stuff there that, in fact, I have posted stuff there that Facebook immediately removed when I put it up. And that was information regarding gender dysphoria and why it actually is a real thing that they're not telling you about. They're freaking poisoning the people.
Yeah.
You want to talk about that for just a second, Pastor?
Well, that goes back to, you remember, Charlie, maybe you can help me remember the prophet's name. The Moabites were going to fight Israel. I can't remember the prophet, but they said, go up on the mountain and curse Israel. And he went up on the mountain, prayed to God, and come back and says, I can't curse Israel. And, they got all mad and butthurt. And they walked along towards the camp of Israel. They're getting ready to go to war and fight Israel. And there's another mountain. He said, go up there and pray to your God. And they do this 3 times, and every time he comes back and Says, I can't curse Israel. So what happened? Eventually, they paid him some money, and he said, look, I'll tell you, this is what you do. I can't curse Israel, but I can tell you how to get Israel to curse themselves. Take your women, go into their camps. They will fall for your women and start following after your gods, and they will curse themselves. That right there is the principle that is happening to America. The system is getting America to curse itself.
Well, to a degree. Now, the far right is pushing the narrative of people being brainwashed in school or whatever. And to a degree, I would agree with that. But the facts of the matter really come down to what's called endocrine disruptors. An endocrine system, which doesn't only affect the reproductive organs, but also affects the brain, the endocrine system is starting to develop around the 20th week of the first trimester of the pregnancy. And if the mother has been in contact with any of these endocrine disruptors, it actually causes physical signs on the body, things that can be measured, and causes some of the organs not to fully develop or to develop incorrectly. And so when you hear the song, I was born